Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we talk about the physical practices last week before the pads even went on. Then we talk about the impressions and observations from the first padded practices over the weekend, and we'll get you ready for the Lions' first of 4 preseason games. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Scott Conover, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Jason Harwood from the Detroit Lions podcast, Talking Grit. Jason was out at practice this weekend. We're going to talk about what he saw firsthand, plus get into some of the bigger topics of training camp going on so far. Jason, thanks for joining the show today. Good to have you back here again.
Matt, it's always great to be talking with you, either on the podcast or just in normal and chat and stuff. So I'm glad that you had me back on.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, I want to make sure the listeners know you are one half of Talking Grit. Jacob Litton is the other co-host. Can you take a bit of a minute or two, and tell the listeners about your show and where they can find it?
Yeah. So it's mostly an audio podcast, but we have started the live shows. So we do that once a week, usually on Mondays around 8:30. You can find us on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube. During the season, we will put out some videos just based on, stuff that's going on during the season. In the summer, we both have kids, so we're kind of tied up with that kind of stuff. But yeah, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We're just two guys talking Lions football. And if you're listening to Matt's show, we know you're Lions fans. We'd love to have you on.
All right. Well, let's get started here. Let's start with those non-padded practices last week. Little shorter span in training camp than normal due to the Hall of Fame game and whatnot. So It seemed like it was a condensed time. But in that condensed time, things got pretty physical, right? Tuesday and Thursday, there was some extra physicality. Dan Campbell even sent a player away at one point. What are your thoughts on that happening? Anything there?
I personally love it. It just shows that these guys are ready and they're taking it seriously, right? This is not a cakewalk. The season's not a cakewalk. They're ready to play. And also with me going on Saturday with the pads, I knew that they'd be hitting and they'd be ready for it. So I loved it. As long as no one's hurt and doing stupid things, I'm okay with it.
All right. Well, and I think there's a lot of people coming at it from a lot of different ways, right? And I'm talking about players. You've got some players who are trying to make the bubble, right? They're trying to get in and get on the roster. There's some who are trying to move up the depth chart, and they see opportunities due to some of these injuries that, hey, maybe they can get noticed. And then you've got the starters who are like, they're ready to go because I'm sure the way last season ended left a bad taste in their mouth, and they want to start putting that work in because that work now is what's going to pay off later. So I guess let's start on that first thing that you mentioned and we've heard is a number of injuries have been reported. The obvious big one is Levi Onwuzurike being out for the entire season, but a number of guys have been banged up during practice. There's been a lot of reacting on social media. I'm wondering, is this something or is this kind of a big nothing? Well, what are your thoughts on these injuries we've been hearing about every day?
I'm sure you're like me, Matt. When you see an injury happen or the Twitter reports come out, your stomach sinks, right? You're like, oh my God, I hope this doesn't last, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, if you look every training camp, every team, they're dealing with something along the same lines. We as Lions fans just had a really bad year last year as far as injuries. So I think that we're just kind of, shell shocked with that a little bit. I don't think there's anything nefarious going on. The Levi stuff does hit hard because he is out for the year. And actually, he had a pretty good year last year, and I was really hoping that he could take another step this year. And, the reasonable contract we got it on, I was like, oh man, we got a really good deal. And then it just didn't turn out that way. So that was wildly disappointing. But what's your feelings on that, Matt?
Well, the Levi one's the big one, right? That was the loss because that was like, well, we got this guy who seems to be on the rise at a discounted price. we're going to be stacked on the interior defensive line, just like we were going to be on the offensive line before Ragnow retired, right? And it was like, oh, these are going to be great spots. But then you've got that. So the Levi thing hurt big. There are some guys who can step up, and we did draft interior offensive and defensive line to start the 2025 draft. So that helps a lot. There's going to be a little bit more on those guys. But as far as the injuries that we've been hearing about, I feel like you're right. You got that PTSD coming off of last season, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And maybe some people are just waiting for that shoe to drop and be like, oh, here we go again. And I'm going to just say it's training camp. People get knocked out for a day or two. I do know some of those reports, that came out early. In addition to Levi, you have some guys that are out till September. And it's like, oh, would like to get Miles Frazier in there and get some reps. But the guys that are getting nicked up in practice here and there, I'm not worried about it yet. We'll see what happens later. But as of right now, I think it's too soon to react too heavily to that because, as you pointed out as well, this is happening all around the league. And the Lions are going to be smart with these players, and we have a lot of time. So,
yeah. I think the Levi one hit kind of hard just because first he showed up on the timing of it, showed up on the PUP list, and we're like, oh, we're going to lose him for the 4 games. And then the next day, it's like he's out for the season. So, and he, excuse me. And what, for me personally, like he could play up and down that line. So it's almost like you're missing like 2 players because he's good interior, which we're going to need whether Liam's out, but he can't go to exterior when we into the, play edge when we need him to do that. And I think it's all right now, but we're all waiting for Davenport to get injured. And so you're like, well, if Davenport gets injured, Levi could just step right in. And now that backup's gone. And now we're going to further down in the depth chart, which is frankly a little bit of a concern, but it is what it is. It's football, man. You got to move on.
All right, well, let's talk about that right now, the roster and the depth a little bit. Defensive end, defensive tackle, right? The Lions have shown some interest in Matthew Judon. There's been that Zadarius Smith talk that just won't go away since the season ended. Neither of those guys are in Lions training camp right now. What are your thoughts on the Lions roster right now? Are you more nervous than you were back in the early part of July, or are you kind of feeling the same?
Well, this will probably go. I went saw practice, so I saw Hutch for my first time. That has calmed my fears at all about the defensive line. That guy is a monster. He is playing like the Hutch of old. So I think for a lot of Lions fans, once we see that guy out playing, he's just gonna. He is not only gonna make just himself. He's an awesome player, right? But he makes everyone down that line better. So I think you're going to see improvements up and down that line. I will also feel better when, like, say Pascal comes back and Wingo. Those guys can, at least swing in and be. There may not be starters, but they could play sizable amounts of downs during the game. So I'll be if they can come back, especially before week 1, I will be really happy. But I'm also really excited to see a guy like Pat O'Connor. Yeah, he's maybe not the most talented guy, but Dan Campbell loves the guy. And if I'm a huge Dan Campbell fan, so if Dan Campbell loves the guy, there's probably a good reason for it. And he also mentions like guys like Chris Smith too, who play on the line, and he's seeing an upgrade now. Second team reps.
Yeah.
He's just another guy that he's not gonna go out and get you 10 sacks, but he's gonna be in the right spot. The guys next to him could count on him doing the right thing. And he's got to get you through like an injury spurt and get, till Aleem gets back and we can start get a better rotation in the inside.
Yeah, I would say the feeling about the roster is this is the reality of the NFL, right? It's not something that you can just load up on. And I've said this before, like you're playing a Madden football game and then you're good to go. There's going to be ups and downs. Nothing's guaranteed. It's going to take work. It's going to take effort. It's going to take a little bit of luck too. But there's also going to be ebbs and flows, and it's starting sooner than you might like, but it doesn't mean, other than obviously Levi, that these guys are gone for the season. Now, obviously, Mekhi Wingo, Josh Pascal, those are some guys that are going to be heavily counted on the rotation. They're not there right now. With those guys not being there right now, does that make you want them to get another guy? Like, I was always in the camp of, I would like it if they kept Zadarius Smith around because he's a known quantity that produced well, And even if he's just a rotational piece, which is all you really need him to be, and he provides one more layer of depth in case of injury at a high level piece as well. So I would like it if they brought somebody else in. I'm not, begging, General Manager Brad Holmes to make that move, but it seems like an intelligent move to me, just knowing where this roster is, where this team is. Are you interested in one of those spots? Do you think the Lions might make a move for one of those spots at some point?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, 100%. I was not a guy like you just banging on the table saying this has to be done and you're not doing your job if you don't get this done. But especially since the Levi thing, yeah, let's get another guy in here that could play. I'm like you. I would like Zadarius back here. We know what he is. He could play the edge, which I'm happy about, but he can kick in inside if we need some inside pressure, on a third and long or something like that. So I could see the usefulness of him. And it's just a matter of them coming down to the right price. Now we did clear a roster spot today. So there is an extra roster spot on the Lions, so maybe tomorrow morning we get an announcement. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, anything is possible. And the other thing to remember is, Brad Holmes recently did say they're always watching everybody else's team right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a lot of movement when rosters get trimmed from 90 to 53. And that's when you're going to see a flurry of activity. Will the Lions partake in that? I don't know. That's when they got Trevor Nowatzki back last year. And so that is when you can grab somebody, because somebody's going, we're going to stash this guy on our practice squad. And the Lions could have an opportunity to grab them if they feel like there's a deficiency at some point. But we've got all a training camp. And so there might be some guys elevating, and you might not need to do that. You might not need to fill some spots. We'll have to see what happens.
Yep.
All right, well, a guy who was back at practice was Alex Anzalone. And this is an interesting one, and there's multiple layers to this, but he was back, and he was asked if there's an update to his contract, and he said no. And, so he's back with no change to his contract. When he spoke to the media beforehand, a couple days earlier, he had said he would like a new contract. He feels like he's underpaid. And they asked, do you feel like things are going the right direction, or you're being whatever? I forget what it was, but his response was, you have to ask Brad and Dan, because he's not going to bring it out public, which is good. And Brad and Dan's not going to bring it out public either. But what is your overall perspective on the Alex Anzalone situation?
At some point, good players are not going to be on this team anymore, and you got a 31-year-old linebacker who frankly deserves to be paid more. But at some point, the Lions got to be like, we got Gibbs, we got Branch, we got all these guys coming out. We got to pay them at some point. So it's like, do you want to re-sign a 31-year-old linebacker, or is Jack Campbell going to be enough with they just paid Derek Barnes? I get it both ways. They might, we don't know the details. The Lions might have said, hey, we'll pay you more this year. We'll kick in a little more. And Alex is like, no, I want, years. I want to add, because he said he wants to retire as a Lion, right? So that to me indicates that he wants a 2 or 3 year deal. He could very well continue to be the player he is until he's 34. Not incredibly likely in the NFL, especially a guy like Alex that's in on every play. We saw he broke his forearm last year. That's a freak injury, but those things can happen, and they're going to happen more often when you get older. So, I'm okay with the situation as long as Alex is on the field. He's not a guy that I think he's going to take it out in Lions and play 50%. He's going to give 100%, because if he does want to get paid, if it's not from the Lions next year, he's going to get paid from somewhere. And so if he's playing 50%, he's not going to get that contract. So that's at least the way I look at it. It's more of a business look, and I don't really like looking at my Lions that way, but that's just the reality of it. How about you, Matt?
Well, first off, I'm going to say I think his career blossomed under Dan Campbell and the group in Detroit. We saw when he first got there, I think most fans were like, what is this guy doing here? And we're like, we need to improve from him. And that conversation has changed dramatically from him being overpaid when he got that contract to now he is arguably underpaid based on what the market value is. Now, what does the future look like, and what can you afford to give him? We already know the salary cap situation is not good next year. Yes, there's a lot of space this year, and you can carry a lot of that over to next year. But Aiden Hutchinson's going to be coming due here, right? It could happen this year that he gets that extension. Jamison Williams is going to be up for that soon. And you just paid Derek Barnes. You're probably going to pay Jack Campbell. Are you going to pay 3 starting linebackers high money like that? You'd like to be able to. And this is where it does get tough because you're right. You've got the fan side of it. You've got the business side of it. And at some point, there will be somebody that's going to be tough to see leave. And like, I know Ifeatu Melifonwu left, but that wasn't tough. That was a reality of the situation. He's been banged up, and we're not going to pay him what Miami's paying him. Good for him. He got a good contract from them. But Alex and what he meant to this team, when we saw it last year firsthand, the fan side of it is, I hope Alex can get a little bit more. You want him to, maybe they can bump him up $1 million or $2 million. I'm throwing random numbers out here without overanalyzing the salary of him versus some of the others. Does he get an extension this year? I don't know. I mean, again, a 1-year extension doesn't make any sense because of the salary cap next year. Then you have to look at a 2-year extension. I mean, I guess you could throw void years on there. But then, like you said, at 31 right now, 32, 33, knowing you're going to have to pay Jack Campbell as well, it's going to be a difficult thing. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know what the Lions are going to do. I'm excited that he's in camp and he's working, unlike some other teams and some other organizations. I think that shows you the relationship the players and the coaches and they have. And he's not happy with it, but he is working through it, and hopefully that ultimately pays off. But again, if you look at what he was making before he came to the Lions to now, even when he first got there, you have seen him grow. And from his perspective, he's probably got one more good contract in him, right? One more high-paying contract. He wants to be able to cash in on that. So, yeah, it'll be something worth monitoring. I hope he's on the field and playing full-time all season for us. It looks like that will be the case. But beyond that, I mean, nothing's guaranteed, right?
Yeah. You could go back to the contract that you mentioned that he signed, a couple, two seasons ago.
Yeah.
I remember talk radio at the time, like everyone, why'd we pay him this much? And then now it's totally flipped. The financials obviously have flipped in the NFL, and his play obviously flipped. It's very apparent that he's, highly valuable for this team. They always talked about him knowing Aaron Glenn. Well, Aaron Glenn's not, on this team anymore, but Shep's kind of continuing the same thing. So I'm curious, but they've also said, just made me think of that, Dave Campbell said this is Jack Campbell's defense now. And so like that adds into it, right, man? And when you think about it, you're like, okay, they used to always say this is Alex's defense. Now they're saying it's Jack. So that kind of signals to me that they're kind of ready to move on. But I'm happy for Alex to be on this team this year. I know you were probably at the last game last year with Minnesota when he came back, and the ovation that he got was, I got goosebumps, and I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it. It's like, yeah, he's a very special player to the city and to this team. So you just don't want to see your family members unhappy, right? And that's what it kind of feels like. Your aunt and uncle are fighting right now, and you're like, okay, well, can we just eat dinner and have a good meal? That's what we want.
Yeah, and they are definitely grooming Jack Campbell for the future. There's no doubt about it, because that's what happens. And but we'll have to see. It looks like everything. I mean, Anzalone is reporting now. He's practiced. Well, he's got the hamstring thing, so I don't think he practiced much, but he was out there doing some stuff. And so why don't we get to that? You were out there. Pad started on Friday, and you were able to attend camp on Saturday. So let's start with your observations there. Let's start with the offensive line. On Thursday, Graham and Tate switched spots from center to guard, and I believe that was more the case on Saturday. Is that true?
Yeah, that was my first look. I'm like, who's lining up where? And they had Glasgow back at center and Tate at guard.
So what were your let's talk to starting 5 on the offensive line. As of right now, you've got Decker and Sewell at the tackle positions, and then that interior offensive line. It's like, all right, we don't know the order. We presume it's going to be Mahogany at left guard, and then they would like to have Ratledge at center and Glasgow at right guard, is the way it sounds. Are you surprised that they're mixing them up in the practice or not?
It signals to me that it was a little bit too much for Tate early on. That's kind of what it signals to me. It's long. They got 4 preseason games. Tate says he wants to play in them. typically starters don't play, but this is different. You got a rookie on the offensive line. I think he's going to start. Um, my initial read, like before training camp even started, is like, yeah, you got to have experience at center. Graham's got to be center. But Dan Campbell said some things like you just need experience on the line, so that could be being next to him. And I think that's what they tried out. But I think it's telling that they had a day off. They initially are going to have Tate just do center, and then they decided to put Graham in there. And then on day two, the next day, the day I was there, they did the same thing. So it kind of tells me that they're dialing back Tate a little bit. I don't know if it necessarily, and I think Tate's going to be fine at right guard because that's what he's always played. But it makes sense. It's a hard position, and it's tough for us Lions fans losing out on Frank. This is difficult for us to see.
Yeah, and I'm going to go from a slightly different angle on this, and I could totally
Yeah.
be wrong, but I think they're just cross training them. I think they're getting reps in both spots, so that way, and they want Tate to be the center, but they're going to give Graham reps at center just in case Tate's not ready, and vice versa. And so I think it's a little bit of cross training right now because we're going to talk about that with some other positions that we're starting to see it with as well. But that's my thought is, all right, we got you in here. Now let's put you back at right guard, a spot you're a little bit more comfortable with, and then we'll put you back in at center. And so you might see it this week before the Hall of Fame game. You might see it after the Hall of Fame game. And so I think that's going to happen for a little bit. And then if they maybe get into a groove and you start seeing Ratledge developing at the center spot the way they want, they might just continue to do that. But once in a while, do the overlap because that gives Graham some reps because I think they might want Graham to be that number one backup center if Ratledge is there. But they also have some other guys on the roster that can play center. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about what you saw on the offensive line while you were out there.
So I will say that they are moving guys. I think that we have better depth this year than we've had in the past. You got guys like Muti and Nice, Iglaquin, Manu. He is definitely better than when I saw him in camp last year. He was not winning, like I would say at most 50% of his reps. Now it's probably 75, 80 from what, from my eye, and just looking more natural in that position. So I'm happy to see about Manu. We probably got stepped on overall because losing Frank, but I think our backup situation is going to be better as long as we can go in healthy.
Okay. Yeah. And, as far as that third tackle position, did you happen to see who was taking reps there at all? And, Skipper was probably the number 3 guy, but
Yeah.
Colby Sorsel, did you happen to see him at all out there?
Colby Sorsal, I did not notice him, and I think I'm scared for him. I just don't know. I think Dan Skipper's going to be that. When Decker gets back, I think Skipper's going to be there, and they're not going to give up on Manu with the progress he's made in a year. So I'd be a little scared if Manu was our left tackle on a game day at this point. But the Lions may, they'll have other plans. They'll move things around. But Manu's going to be on the team. That's going to take a spot for Sorsdale. He's just not repping very high.
All right. Well, let's move over to receivers. And I want to start by talking about a drill Campbell was talking about. I believe it was Saturday morning. It's called the 2 receiver drill. Well, 2 receivers go out for a pass, and they turn, and one of them gets the ball, and the other one turns into a blocker right away. And they don't know who's going to get the ball until it's actually thrown. So I love the idea of that thing because that also preaches to, hey, you're not done with your play if you don't get the ball. You're moving on to the next thing and whatnot. And so that was cool that Campbell talked about that. The rookie wide receivers were out there, and they were making some plays. What did you see out of these guys? And did they run that play? Did you see that drill at all?
They did not. They ran some other drills that were pretty cool, but not that specific drill. Because I was already at camp by that time that press conference come up, and then I heard that soundbite afterwards. I was like, oh, that would have been cool to see. So hopefully, I'm going back a couple more times, so I'm hoping I get to see that drill once. But as far as your other question about the young receivers, yeah, this is in stark contrast to last year where Isaiah Williams is the only one that popped. We're having many guys pop. I know it's early in camp. We haven't even played a game yet. I think there's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, I think the talent's upgraded. And number 2, I think Hendon Hooker and Kyle Allen are better than Hendon Hooker this year is better than Hendon Hooker last year. And Kyle Allen, while I don't think he's superstar or anything like that, he's an upgrade over Nate Sudfeld. So I think that's maybe why you're seeing a little bit of that. But the fact is you got Lovett, he's going to be a special teams demon. I don't want to call that he's going to make a roster, but I just feel like he's going to be a gunner and he's going to make this team because he's making plays receiving. Jackson Meeks was the guy that I was been hearing a little bit from, like the POD guys, hearing like what he's doing in practice. Made an
Yeah.
awesome one-handed diving catch, was great. And then I can't not meant Tesla, right? Tesla was, I'm looking for him because, third round pick. We trade up a lot of capital, get him. Let's see what this guy's got. First of all, he is big. Like just watch, it's different seeing guys on TV or, watch a video and you get them right in front of you and you're like, wow, that guy, and especially next to his counterparts, he is big, physical. He ended practice with this amazing diving catch, which is on social media. I think, if you want to see it, it's great. That was the last play and he had a big spike afterwards. What I liked about that catch is that the cornerback was draped all over him and he was physical and able to fight through because everybody was talking about his hands are good. So I knew he could make a catch, but the fact to be able to fight through contact and still make the catch, a diving catch, and then hitting the ground, maintaining possession, it was very encouraging.
That is exciting and great to hear. And we are in such a different spot than last year. Like you said, I mean, last year we have Amon-Ra St. Brown. We have Jamison Williams not coming off of what he came off of this past year, right? It was the year before. And then you had Khalif Raymond. Those were your top three receivers last year. And now St. Brown is just another year of being a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro. And so you're like, wow, okay, this guy has elevated even more if that was possible. Jamison Williams took a huge step last year. And then Tim Patrick worked himself into that number 3 spot, into a role that, he stayed healthy. We got him, at the end of training camp, and it was like, oh my goodness, a blessing to get him at the end because we were going into the season like, do we have enough receivers? Well, we've got those 3 guys back, plus Khalif Raymond, Isaac Tesla. The expectations went up based on where he was drafted, but the expectations, I think, got tempered a little bit with the reminder of, look at this. The 4 guys in front of him. And remember, this guy's probably got some growing to do before he can make a huge impact, but you're already starting to see some of that impact. Him, Dominic Lovett and Jackson Meeks. I mean, you've got a lot of potential here. It's going to be hard to keep all these guys. I mean, we're going to go 6 deep in the wide receiver position, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the guy like Lovett or Meeks, I mean, they're going to have to make it on special teams because they're not going to keep those guys if they can't do it on special teams. I don't know about Jackson Meeks on special teams because I don't know his, I haven't seen too much of him on the field yet. Lovett, I've just heard enough of that. I think he's going to be a gunner. They did not do any punting drills when I was there, so I didn't get to see him in that position. But hopefully when I go back, I do get to see him because I think that's how he's going to really cement a position on this team. Before we get off on wide receivers, I do want to mention that after practice was over, on the far field, so the field like not closest to where the stands are, Goff and Amon-Ra stayed and kept practicing back shoulder throws.
Oh.
And I saw him like do it like 3 or 4 times, and then and then they just walked off. But it was just a quick thing that they did after practice. But I don't know about you, Matt, but I don't remember a lot of Jared Goff throwing back shoulder throws at all. And wondering if this is going to be a new wrinkle that they add in because with Amon-Ra being such a great route runner, and if they start doing it with JMO too, and you got to respect his speed, there's so much separation there. I would really like to see that because you see other teams do it, and I just haven't seen Jared, or at least I can't remember, Jared Goff doing it too much, at least on purpose.
Well, you hit on a couple things there, right? One is the young receivers repping and contributing on special teams, and that's going to be big. And I think that will be the difference maker where they keep that 6th receiver or not. I do think they will keep 6 receivers this year. But those wide receivers repping different spots. You talk about Jared Goff practicing that back shoulder throw. We're seeing running backs, if I'm not mistaken. I think Gibbs was lining up as a receiver, but also we've had different people lining up in the slot and different people lining up outside. Did you see some of those things?
Yeah, so I actually saw one play in particular because it shocked me. The second team offense was out there and they had Gibbs out there in the slot lining up. And then I did see some 2-back sets early on too. When they were So the first part of practice, they had 11 on 11s, but it was more of a walkthrough speed. And that's when I saw Alex out there for the first time. I don't think Alex practiced much more around the walkthrough. So they were just getting their timing stuff early in practice. That was even before stretching. Um, they are moving people all around, and you're just seeing a lot more pop because of Hendon. I think Hendon is he's gonna make if he has a good camp, he's gonna turn some eyes, and the people are gonna be like, "Oh, we could trade him and get that's where everyone's thought goes to." But I like having reliable backup back there, so I'm happy with Hendon's progress.
Yeah, and I mean that progress is really important for a variety of reasons, but also I do agree with you. If you don't have good backup quarterbacks, training camp's going to be rough for those receivers who aren't just catching passes from Jared Goff, and that's going to impact their ability to grow. I like that idea of just that insight you showed of Goff and St. Brown practicing that. We're hearing little things about wrinkles, right? About the two-back set, about these different guys lining up in different spots, and maybe it's cross-training, so if somebody goes down, they got someone to fill in. But also it goes back to something we've been talking about for a couple of years now, which is the Lions just kind of like this thing called positionless football. They just want playmakers on offense, right? Jahmyr Gibbs isn't a running back. He's a playmaker. Okay. And, linebackers playing defensive line. I mean, you've got Derek Brooks coming up and whatchamacallit? I said Derek Brooks. Yeah, Derek Barnes. Sorry. I knew I said it wrong. Derek Brooks is an old school guy. Showing my age
I was like,
there.
we're back in Tampa Bay, Matt.
Yeah. No, Derek Barnes. But coming up on the line, the way they've got the linebackers playing there, and they'll just move guys around. And so this is exciting. And the offense is going to have more talent this year. The offensive line is going to be the work in progress, and that's going to have to gel. But Gibbs, if possible, is going to be better. David Montgomery, we heard him talk about how much he's motivated this year. And I mean, I'm sure he's motivated every year, but he's got like extra motivation this year. Sione Vaki's injured right now. I want to see him back on the field because I think he's another guy that could play perfect into some of this positionless stuff. I've heard, Dan Campbell saying great things about Jamison Williams, about he's figuring more things out. He's taking on a leadership role. And some people are saying his hands are getting better. And I'm like, yeah, I thought they were pretty darn good last year. I know that was a concern his first year and a half in the league. But last year, I mean, he made some incredible tough catches across the middle. And so if JMO takes even a half a step forward this year from what he did last year, watch out. So, and then if they're going to add these more wrinkles in, does all this stuff that you're seeing on the offensive side kind of excite you?
Oh, 100%. We got a new offensive coordinator. Obviously, we haven't mentioned his name, Johnny Morton.
Yeah.
And, you could have the perspective like, Ben Johnson was great. And, I'm scared that this is going to be a detriment to the offense. And I think that's a valid concern. However, I also like to change things up a little bit. Let's not get predictable. Let's think a little bit outside the box. And the thing that's important to me is that Johnny Morton has a relationship with Jared Goff, a prior relationship, knows he helped install this offense. He's already said, I'm not going to come in here and change things. Why would I come in and just make wholesale changes? But even if Ben Johnson was here, there would be changes, right? He would put, whether it's the same changes or not, I don't know, but there would be things that they would have to learn and adapt to. The two-back sets has me really interested. Like, just like I haven't been calling for it, like some people have. But just from a matchup perspective, I'd really like to hear what Coach Angler on that's normally on your. I'd really be interested in what he thinks about this because, you could have the perspective of like, okay, well, what's the difference of having Jameer out there and another slot receiver? Well, it's all about creating a matchup, and you want to get a linebacker on Gibbs or a linebacker on Montgomery and then somehow isolate that or cause some confusion. And I think that that's what they're aiming for. So I want to see it in play. I don't know if we'll see it too much in the preseason because everything goes pretty vanilla. But during the regular season, when they get that on the field, I know that I'll be pretty excited to see how that's defended and how, if it's successful or not.
All right. Well, we spent a lot of time on the offense. We're going to touch on the defense again a little bit. You mentioned seeing Hutchinson out there. What were some of the things you noticed from the defensive side of the ball at camp this weekend?
Incredible amount of pressure on Goff, which you could attribute to maybe the offensive line, which may worry you. I saw Hutch just dominate, and that's against Sewell, who is a monster in his own right. So Hutch is back, and I I was intrigued by their defense. I was already impressed by their back seven. You know, DJ Reed, Taron Arnold. I am expecting a huge second year jump. Obviously, we got two Pro Bowl All Pro, in my opinion, two All Pro safeties back there with Branch and Kirby. We've already talked about our linebackers that are very good, but the fact that we got pressure, and if we can get any sort of pressure, our secondary is going to be able to lock them down. So that's the first thing I noticed is the intense amount of pressure, and it just wasn't just from Hutch, but it was like a whole collapsing thing. So we'll see if it's just our offensive line or if the defensive line is just that, that good. I'm hearing a lot of blitzes. I did not see a lot of blitzes in the practice I was at, linebacker blitzes, but that might have been just the practice that I was in. They were mostly in red zone, which you don't really necessarily blitz too much there. They weren't running like a third down drill like they were doing the other day.
All right. Well, what about Marcus Davenport? We heard the coaching staff raving about him, and again, the only thing has been, can the man stay healthy? And so I guess let's just start there. Did you see him on the field? Did he do anything?
Yeah, he was on the field. I didn't notice him getting any sacks, but it was just he is just a if you ever seen Davenport, the guy is huge.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the first thing that I noticed about him. And I could understand why he has so much power because of just his sheer size. I'm I'm on the team of I'm excited that they brought him back. They got him for reasonable. If you remember back the first two games of last year with him on one side, if you could collapse one side of the pocket towards Hutch, I just think that just makes Hutch even more dangerous. So that's what I'm hoping that happens this year. I didn't see Davenport necessarily popping this, but there was just so much pressure that it was all coming at the same time and Hutch is the one that was ultimately Dan Campbell's calling. He called the play dead. He said Hutch has got a sack. You could hear Dan all the way in the stand. So Hutch sack. It was awesome.
Well, yeah, and the Davenport, I don't know why people didn't want him signed back because the price we got him for was nominal. Now, I can understand the desire to get more depth behind him and not just rely on him. But the thing I go back to is it's not the same injury over and over and over. It's been a variety of different things. And so, therefore, I think there's an increased chance you can recover and, move on. I mean, there have been times when other people have been injured early in their career. I know it's not that early in his career, but he has that chance and that they do come back and then they get over that hurdle or that roadblock. And so hopefully that happens for him because you're right, that this defense can take a really big step forward this year. I mean, if you look the way we played the first 5 games of last year and, we get something like that again, it's just going to make this team that much more difficult. Any final observations on the defense before we hit special teams?
No, I mean, Terry Arnold looked good. Amik Robertson looked really good. And even when these receivers are making diving catches, the coverage is good. I mean, they're not blowing the coverage. So I'm intrigued. DJ Reed only did walkthrough. He did not play. So he was on the sideline. So I don't know if he was sitting out. So I didn't get to see too much of DJ Reed. It was kind of disappointing for me because I really wanted to see him in action. But yeah, I'm
All
happy.
right.
Kirby was out too. So that was another thing I didn't get to see him, but the back end's gonna be fine.
All right, well, let's talk special teams. We know who the kicker is. There's no doubt about that, which it's the first time we've been able to say that confidently, probably since Jason Hansen. And so going in year 2, Jake Bates, what did you see?
His leg is so powerful, man. It just looks so effortless for this guy. I mean, he started out, but he was the first one on the field, like before anybody else. He was out there and he's kicking and he kicked like 33, 43, 53, and 63 before the practice even started. The 63-yarder had room to spare. It was unbelievable, this guy. So during the actual practice, he kicked 3 and was 3 for 3, the longest being 53 yards. And it doesn't even seem like he's really having to put too much effort into it. It's crazy. But they did practice kickoffs, which if you listen to Dave Phipp, they're going to be, and the new kickoff rules this year, they're going to be a little more aggressive as far as like not touchback. Touchbacks come out to the 35 now. So Jake Bates was trying a lot of different kicks. He's got like this helicopter kick that Amon-Ra was back there,
Yeah.
almost dropped one. And so if Amon-Ra's going to drop it, I'm thinking that it must have threw him for a little bit of a loop. But then he was trying these short pooch ones, but he missed the landing zone twice. So I don't know if they're going to keep doing that. But so that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on, especially in these preseason games. What these teams are going to, how they're going to kick this. So.
Well, and I think that's one of the big things that people don't realize is there's still an evolution taking place with Jake Bates. I mean, last year wasn't necessarily as good as it gets. That was his first year in the NFL. And the Lions coaching staff talked about this earlier and recently that they didn't want to put too much on Bates that first year. So they had him, focused more. And now they're going to have him focus more on the kickoff because there was like, all right, the field goal was the big thing. And so they had him focusing on the field goal. Now it's going to be a little bit more kickoff, and they're going to see more of what they wanted to do last year. And they couldn't do it all because they had a young kicker. And, the new kickoff rule, even the adjustment to it this year as well, plays into that. That's exciting to hear what you saw because that backs up what they're saying is they wanted to do returns. They wanted to force more returns last year, but again, they just weren't there. So, and that's, Dan Campbell and company putting the players in position to succeed so that the team can succeed. So that's exciting. And I mean, with his ability, what we saw last year, there's a guy that can do it. It seems like this is a guy, and man, this could not, I mean, when you find a kicker, you hold on to that guy. And, this could be a pretty amazing beginning of things here for the Lions with him.
Yeah, you talk about pressure pack kicked. I mean, he hit many last year for us. And going back to what you said earlier about, him focusing mostly on field goals last year. I mean, you think about it, he had just came off the Michigan Panthers season. So he's like kicking for them, and then he basically goes right into training camp with the Lions. So you're like, they don't want to you can't just kick this guy endlessly. He can't, you're like, oh, just practice him more. No, you're going to cause an injury. So I get what the Lions are going to do. It kind of worked out timing wise because most people were they started to do more touchbacks. So the Lions didn't have to really focus on that, but it's worked out in the Lions' favor that now when touchbacks and there's a higher penalty on them now to the 35, let's work on some other things. I'd really be interested if they're going to start seeing some squib kicks because if it hits in the landing zone and bounces through the end zone, then it only comes out to the 20. So you're talking like a 15-yard difference. That's going to be huge you got to get it in the landing zone, for it to count. But we saw Bates do that at the end of last season. There was a couple kicks I remember him doing. I think one might have been in the Minnesota game that they did the squibs and then they just shot through the end zone. So it'll be interesting in future practices whether they do that or not.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a large evolution of the kickoff this year because now every team has an entire year under their belt, and things have been adjusted to make that even more of a penalty to kick it out of the end zone, that you're going to see them try more things. And the Lions were asked about how the new kickoff rules will affect the roster, and Dan said it might affect some teams, but it's not going to affect the Lions because they've got the same philosophy they had last year. They were already trying to kick it to force returns, couldn't do it as much, but I think you'll continue to see them do even more of that this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Lions are playing a preseason game before the month of July ends. Hall of Fame game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Still sounds weird to say that, but against the Chargers. What are your thoughts on Lions getting that extra preseason game?
First of all, if you just said San Diego, I'd have been okay with that because I've done that on my own podcast. And Jacob, who's 10 years younger than me, makes fun of me because, I'm an old man and that's, they'll forever be the San Diego Chargers. But anyways, what am I looking forward to in that game? First, Lions football, just having that back. Jason Benetti calling the game. Yeah, looking forward to that too. That is him and TJ Lang. I'm really looking forward to that. But as far as the actual game, offensive line, I mean, I want to see how they line up, who's going to be out there. Are they going to play, or is Tate going to be out there, and what position is he going to be? Is it going to be center or right guard? That'll be my first thing that I'm looking for. Second thing, these young receivers that we talked about earlier, last year we were looking for that. No one popped. I think this year it's going to be different, and you're going to have some preseason darlings. And people are going to expect big things, but you got to temper your expectation. The preseason, they're playing second and third teamers out there. So, but I'm thinking Tesla is going to get out there. I know that a lot of times they don't play their draft picks, but I would assume that he's going to make the field quite a bit. And Hendon has said, I don't know if you caught this or not too, but Hendon said he latched on to Tesla pretty early,
Yeah.
and I was excited to hear that, and it made sense, right? Like, okay, got a draft pick here. I want to show that they brought in a third string quarterback. Hendon's got to show something, right? And why not latch onto this big, tall receiver who doesn't drop passes?
Oh, for sure. And I think these extra reps are going to be super valuable to so many of these players. So I'm actually excited they have the extra preseason game because it's a fourth game of getting real reps. And we talked about this on our last show, which is the joint practices are big, and that's awesome. But going through an entire game and having to be the starter in that position is going to be good for a lot of growth. Another byproduct of this is the Lions got to padded practices, it feels like, earlier than normal because of the extra game, and we saw how physical they were already. They get to go against another team that much quicker as well, which I think will also help for growth and maybe for keeping some anger and some tensions in check because you're not just practicing against the same guys, day after day after day. They're going to get a game on Thursday. And so I think that's going to help. Everyone says, oh, you're not going to see anybody. Well, if, depends your level of football, right? And I'll tell you, I'm super excited. I can tell you as a kid watching these games in my childhood, like I remember going to a Tiger game with the family in August, and we go to the hotel that night, and I'd be up at like 1 or 2 in the morning because the Lions had a preseason game. And if you remember back in the day, they would just replay that preseason game at like 2 a.m. So I'm up there watching the game. Everybody else is asleep. But now I've got a different interest, which is understanding who these guys are. They're going to move up the depth chart, who might make a starting position out of this. And so I think it's really good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the human aspect and just like starting to root for some of these guys. You mentioned Vaki earlier. That's just one guy I latched onto, and hopefully he can play on Thursday, but hopefully we see him in the preseason because seeing him in the regular season might be here and there. But it is nice to latch onto these guys like a Jackson Meek. Okay, undrafted free agent. Can he make his dream come true? Dominic Lovett, 7th round pick. Okay, can he make his dream come true and make a roster? So you and I also do this podcast thing, right? So we have gives us more things to talk about, and we just have a deeper understanding of the roster. And so yeah, it's not, people say it's not real football. Well, there's some real consequences in this game for these human players. So it is real in that aspect. Does it count towards the standings? No, but it will help this team produce later on. We're gonna, we'll put these guys in position. Will this guy make the practice squad? Could he come up in October, November when an injury hits and be like, oh, I saw that guy in spring training or preseason, and that it'll hit like that. So I am excited for football on Thursday for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing I brought up is it kind of gives the coordinators some reps, right? They get the real game situations to kind of feel it out and then reflect on it and do it again. So that extra thing is going to help the coordinators as well, just to kind of get a feel for that position because you got Green Bay and Chicago division opponents right away to start the season. So,
yeah, one thing that's a great point. One thing that I guess I haven't really thought about, but Jared Goff hasn't heard Johnny Morton call in a game, right? So I'm sure that during these preseason games, I mean, obviously he's not going to play, but he probably have that helmet on and hear what's going on and get used to that voice and used to the cadence and how it's gone. And I hadn't really thought about that's going to help him too.
For sure. All right. Well, Jason, any other thoughts you want to share from training camp or anything about the Hall of Fame game you're looking forward to? Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I'm going to a couple more practices. Matt, I know you're going to come on our show after you go to your practice, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm actually going. We're recording this Sunday night. I'm going tomorrow, actually, to watch another practice. Jacob and I will be at the practice, so we'll talk about that tomorrow night. So If you want to tune in after you've listened to this podcast and, given it a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple or whatever, then you can come over to ours and you can listen about tomorrow's practice. So that I'm just so excited that football's back and the dead period's done and we could talk like actual people hitting each other. I love it.
For sure. Folks, this is Jason Harwood. Jason from Talking Grit Detroit Lions podcast. Jason, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your insights from training camp over the weekend and talking extra Lions football as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Matt.
And once again, a big thank you to Jason Harwood from Talking Grit. Great getting his insights and observations from practice over the weekend. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Please remember to tell your friends and family about the show. You can find us on most streaming platforms as well as YouTube. You can find us on social media like Twitter and Instagram. Check out more content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.